This episode brought to you by TAUMMHOMS, which is a natural sleep and sound healing portal helping people globally to get to sleep faster and stay asleep longer through TAUMMHOMS.com. That's www.TAUMMHOMS.com.
It's My Wright Stuff with your host, Grammy Award-winning record producer and inventor, Toby Wright. My Wright Stuff is brought to you by TAUMMHOMS, a natural sleep and sound healing portal available globally at www.taummmhoms.com. That's www.TAUMMHOMS.com. I'm your announcer, Grinnin' Barrett. Here's Toby.
Hey, I'm Lord Toby Wright, and this is My Wright Stuff News. All right, and welcome to the My Wright Stuff Good News. Well, let's kick things off with the music news. Earthling is the third full-length solo release for the Pearl Jam frontman Eddie Vedder. It features a guest appearance from Elton John and was produced by Andrew Watt. Well, Spoon's 10th album, Lucifer on the Sofa, is the band's purest rock and roll record to date. Texas-made, it is the first set of songs that the quintet has put to tape in its hometown of Austin in more than 10 years. Written and recorded over the last 2 years, both in and out of lockdown, these songs mark a shift towards something louder, wilder, and more full color. Well, with their forthcoming double album, Big Thief set out to capture the many facets of their sound on one record. Their pursuit of that ambitious goal spanned 4 recording sessions in 4 different states across 5 months, producing 45 finished songs. The band then pared them down into Dragon New Warm Mountain, I Believe in You's 20 tracks. It's quite the title. Well, the original Killing Joke lineup has announced the Lord of Chaos EP, marking its first new material in 7 years. The effort contains 2 brand new recordings plus 2 reworkings of songs from the confrontational UK's band last studio album, 2015's Pylon. Looking forward to that. Well, let's go on over to film and TV news. I Want You Back premieres on Amazon Prime. Well, Peter and Emma are total strangers. When they meet, they realize they were both dumped on the same weekend. Their commiseration turns into a mission when they see that each of their ex-partners have happily moved on to new romances. Well, the season finale of Book of Boba Fett is on Disney+. On the sands of Tatooine, bounty hunter Boba Fett and mercenary Fennec Shand navigate the galaxy's underworld and fight for Jabba the Hutt's old territory. Well, Blacklight hits theaters this week. In this tense action thriller, Liam Neeson stars as Travis Block, a freelance government operative living on the fringes and coming to terms with his shadowy past. When he discovers an undercover team that's targeting U.S. citizens, Block finds himself in the crosshairs of the FBI director he once helped protect. Whoa. Also in theaters now is Death on the Nile. A Belgian sleuth's Egyptian vacation aboard a glamorous river steamer turns into a terrifying search for a murderer when a picture-perfect couple's idyllic honeymoon is tragically cut short. And finally, The Puppy Bowl will air Sunday afternoon on the Animal Planet. Prepare yourselves for cuteness overload. Well, let's go on over to the world of sports. Well, in Formula One news, McLaren have signed Lando Norris through the 2025 season, and in the upcoming weeks, we'll see all the new cars for the 2022 season unveiled. Check your favorite team's website for their unveiling. Well, in the Premier League, table leaders Manchester City play Norwich City. Second place, Liverpool play Berklee. And third place, Chelsea play Arsenal. And the Super Bowl 56 takes place Sunday at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. The LA Rams take on the Cincinnati Bengals, and this should be a very exciting game with a really amazing halftime show as well. Really looking forward to that. Should be fun. And good luck to both teams. Well, let's go on over to the world of tech and gear. Jetpack Aviation has a flying motorcycle readying for production. And after spending 18 months building an entirely new form of flight control software, Jetpack's Aviation has completed flight testing on its first prototype of the Speeder, a jet turbine-powered flying motorcycle. Top speeds on the final version will be rather epic. Naturally, the U.S. defense agencies are very interested in the prototypes, and the Speeder is one of the top candidates for the U.S. Air Force's AFWERX high-speed VTOL program. There's also some civilian missions it'd be perfect for, even if its roaring jet engines would be far too loud for intercity transport. And you can find Jetpack Aviation here. Well, that's all the news that's making the news. Thanks for watching. This week, February 11th, 2022. Now on over to you, Lord Rage. Oh, hey, thanks, Toby. You are looking mighty fine today. Haha. Anyway, welcome back to My Wright Stuff, which is a film, TV, sports, music, adventure, and inspirational lifestyle podcast. I'm your host, Lord Toby Rage Wright, and today I have a very, very special guest, Herwig Mauer. If you're not familiar with Herwig, he's a true Renaissance man and multimedia artist. He's been nominated for an Academy Award for his work on Apocalypto. But before we meet him, I want to thank you, all of our supporters who stream, download, watch, and support My Wright Stuff. Keep spreading the word, my friends. We really, really do appreciate it. And be sure to click on our show notes below to follow our link tree for a full list of all the channels we're streaming on, as well as all of our sites and social media platforms. If you'd like to donate to My Wright Stuff, please follow the support link above. Every single dollar helps support the My Wright Stuff crew who make all of this possible. And of course, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as the podcast channel of your choice so you never ever miss a single episode. And after this episode, please head on over to mywrightstuff.com, go to the store tab, and pick up some snazzy merch for those bodies. And if you're so inclined, pick up a gift for a loved one. Well, as I said, today's guest is Herwig Mauer, who has had a very eclectic career path. He's been film and TV sound in many, many different roles. He also has a playable character in a PlayStation 3 game called Rocketbirds. He is Agent H. And for the rest of his story, we'll let him tell us. Well, ladies and gentlemen, please give a nice, very warm welcome to Herwig Mauer. How are you today, Herwig?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you. Glad to be here. Good morning.
Yes, I'm glad to have you. Well, here at My Wright Stuff, I like to start at the beginning so my audience can get a bit of a background on you. I understand you're an Austrian native, and did you grow up in a musical or an artistic family?
Yes, I did. I was my dad really is my dad's side, and even though he chose due to family pressure and the way that life was back then, he ended up being a lawyer. He always wanted to be, which was a big finger to his family because they wanted him to be a doctor, but he was like, I'm not gonna be a doctor. I'm not gonna be a doctor. I'm gonna break the family pattern, and didn't pull off the opera singer that he wanted to be. He wanted to be an opera singer. He wanted to be he was a multi-instrumentalist. He played all kinds of instruments. He, was a graphic artist. He did a lot of artistic things, and I grew up with all of that, playing clarinet and guitar and piano and making clay art pieces and covering the house with paper and getting messy and doing finger painting as little kids. I remember a lot of things like that. And I also remember they put me, my first music education that I had was at the Karl Orff Institute in Salzburg, where I grew up, and that was very much about, they had like bowls of water and like xylophones and drums, and we'd be like, I don't know, 3 years old, 4 years old, little kids, and we'd basically explore sound with physical play and with, so that I remember that clearly. And then that led to
Right. That's
tra-
great.
traditional music education and music harmony, music theory, and all of that, and classical piano. I did all that as a kid, and then yeah, so
Great.
that's
And how did
kind
that
of
lead to your first? How'd that lead to your first record production for Fast Last Circus?
how did that lead? Well, I kept I kind of walked away from the music harmony and all of that. I mean, I was, as soon as I was old enough to assert my own um persona a little bit more, I was like, this doesn't work for me. But thankfully enough, my parents were supportive enough too to be like, okay, what do you want to do? You want a guitar amp? Okay, we'll help you out. So when I was 12 or something, I got my first guitar amp and
That's
an
cool.
electric guitar and started just jamming and band in the basement and all of that. And first I was a singer, really. That was kind of like my bigger success was as a frontman. I always loved playing instruments and kind of writing and producing and all that from an early age. And all of my heroes back then
Cool.
were like, producers and stuff. But this band Fastless Circus was pretty successful locally, as far as things go, and it was kind of like a punk band, hardcore punk band, and I was really letting it fly on stage. A lot of my issues and traumas and stuff, I really, I found early therapy on stage, as a 15-year-old, and it was,
Right.
led to a lot of attention from a lot of places. So we kind of did our best to just make an album with the best engineers and stuff that we could find around in our hood. It wasn't, it's not like in LA today. There wasn't that much available, but
Right.
we kind of did a self-financed, self-produced album. Back then there was a vinyl, very proudly making a 12-inch on vinyl. That was, I think CDs
Oh
were
yeah.
just starting to come around, but we had there was an album, and one thing that I just noticed today when I was kind of thinking about where we might go today was that album. I wrote all the lyrics, and it was kind of my brainchild philosophically, I would say. From the way that
Right.
the band was presented. Musically we all collaborated, and the album title was God's Call. And it was really odd for like
Okay.
a 15-year-old mentality, or I mean, and it didn't have a lot of relevance to any of the lyrics or any of the songs that were there, at least not obviously. But I realize right now, even back then, I was very much guided by a very deep sense of spirituality that I would even call religious. Going into the religious. Like I've just been led by that. It's a red thread that goes through my whole life, and it's kind of interesting
I
that my
gotcha.
first album would be called that, because I was like a kid with
Right.
dreadlocks, and we'd be doing drugs and skateboarding, and it was not a very religious, pious kind of lifestyle back then. So yeah.
Right. So then you
Um,
went to Berklee, right, in Boston, and what did you
yep.
study there?
I studied what was my major? My major was music production and film scoring, I believe. Yeah, and my main instrument
Okay.
was piano again. Like I remember I had to choose a
Right.
instrument, and I was like,
Right.
if I'm gonna let these fools teach me guitar, I'm probably gonna be a really horrible guitar player. I mean, I still had that punk rock rebellious attitude. I didn't want nobody, and I still, like I love playing the guitar, and I jokingly often say I try not to be yeah, I try to be positive about it and just, point at the fact that I have a very
Right.
unique style and I play the effects more than I play the guitar, and I'm not the chord guy,
Okay.
like I don't know a lot of, like I just like to make noise and make the guitar sound, even though I have all that classical background and all that, and I can read music, and you know, and I
Right.
learned at Berklee, especially then going back to like, you know, real instrumentation and orchestration. And, you know, I have a foundation in all those things, and I try to avoid it at all costs. You know, I try to really approach music from a
Right.
dilettante punk rock background and overall artist. You know, my overall artist approach is just, you know, it's not about craftsmanship at all. I try to avoid craftsmanship, you know, to a fault, you know, to a point to where it's maybe
Okay.
hindered me even. But I also realize, you know, my big heroes like whatever, Leonardo da Vinci or Socrates and people like that, you know, like those guys, they're all were multifaceted artists that
Right.
did everything, and arguably they did some
Yep.
things very well, but you know, it was not about getting really good at like playing scales or you know, or anything, you know. Like, I mean, I have a lot of appreciation for great musicianship, you know, and artistry, and you know, on every level.
Right.
It's not my path. You know, my path is be an overall storyteller, and you know, like it all comes relatively easy, but to actually just like go really deep with one niche aspect of craftsmanship is that's not my craft. My craft is the big picture kind of. If that makes sense. And I think
Understood.
your
Yeah,
original, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, and your original question about I think was how did I end up even at Berkeley, or what was the question? What did I answer it?
Yeah. Well, what did you
Yeah.
study?
What do you study? Yeah.
And you answered that part of the
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
but after Boston, you went to L.A., right? And you worked
Yep.
in film. And how'd you get
Yep.
into that coming out of Berkeley?
Well, I mean, going to Berkeley, the real idea really was to find a kind of like to please the parents' desire and the society's desire and fear of like, how am I going to be a, you know, like again, my heroes, my role models, they're all lived by having some rich king support them and see their genius and allow them to be geniuses without any producing anything of financial merit, you know. So that's how I was as an
Right.
artist, you know, and still am today. So going to Berkeley was an attempt to get a degree, which I never ended up getting. You know, I kind of bailed because I didn't want to do my piano
Right.
exam. You know, like playing the scales that fast as they wanted me. I was just like,
Oh,
you know, so I did it. I did everything except pass my piano exam at Berkeley. You know, so that's why I don't
punk
have a
rock,
degree
baby.
even. Yep. And I came back there and I had a record deal and things were happening and I went back to do it again when I was out in LA and I was like, come on, you guys, just give me that degree, you know. But they're like, no, you know, you still can't play
Right.
those scales fast enough. So and you know, it was the defiance and rebellious nature to one end, but also just like their authentic unwillingness to you know, bend to the way that society wants one to be. And I mean, I did choose to go to a art college, to a music college, so that I have that
Right.
security. Or I can become a music teacher, or I can be this, or I can be that, or I can, you know, have a legit, you know, or I can learn something to be in the film industry. I can learn about sound design, or you know. And in retrospect, I realized. I mean, I always knew that life experience in those areas will always take you much further than a degree, you know, in any art. And
Oh, for sure.
for sure. But to answer,
Experience is king, man.
yeah, but to answer your question, you know, it's not, I mean, I learned a lot of great stuff there at Berkeley, don't get me wrong. And I had an opportunity to spend 3, 4 years exploring my art, and I made really great relationships there, you know, within and without Berkeley, you know, like one of my big, uh, mentors at that time was this guy Fred Gianelli from Psychic TV and Telepathic Records, and I was really heavily into electronic music at the time. And you know, at Berkeley, there was they were a little behind with that. You know, like there was no
Sure.
mentionable electronic music scene or anything within the school or around there. But you know, but I connected with Fred, who really took me under his wing, and I learned so much about modular synthesizers and you know, and like his history with all these like famous industrial bands that were like my heroes. And you know, I released a bunch of techno and electro like house records with him on his label and then on other places, through him and through my time at Berklee,
Oh,
where I
cool.
just had time to, you know, while other people were doing their arrangements and their harmony practice, I would be banging techno tracks at my house and make records. So it was, and I could do
Absolutely.
that because I was a student. None of that was very lucrative or like it wasn't a legit music career
Right.
where you could really make money with any. I mean, there was some, but it was not. Yeah, but
Oh, I get it. I get it.
yeah, you get it. But
So one of your first gigs,
yeah. So let me just wrap
I'm
this one
sorry, go
up real
ahead.
quick. Yeah, because so basically I went to
Sure.
Berkeley to become certified as like some kind of industry professional or engineer or something. Went to LA with a couple of friends that I met at Berkeley to open up a post-production and sound music recording business, called Alpha State, and we had a studio, and it was five of us, all Berkeley guys. Most of them were from LA, so they had some connections and
Okay.
stuff there. And we went there to build a legitimate business. Now that we are graduates or almost graduates or have like the Berkeley thing, and
Yep.
sure enough, we never really ended up doing a whole lot of work like that. Because what ended up happening now that we built a studio to record other people, one of the guys and myself, we just recorded our own tracks and kind of my electro music that I was doing at the time. Kind of, I got back into my guitar playing and started singing and again, and then I was like, oh, these are some cool tracks, and he loved them, and things spiraled out of control very quickly, and we found great success with that band. So the whole recording business was just the playground for our own art once again, and I
Right.
met some really great some of the first clients we had at that studio are people that I still connect with today and make music with today and do stuff with today. So it was really great to have that idea, but I never really ran a real recording studio that really operated as a business. It's just I don't think if I
Right.
could, like it seems like a good idea to have a real. That's my version of like my dad trying to be a being a lawyer to not be a
Right.
doctor. For me, it's like I'm trying to be an engineer, recording studio owner to avoid being an artist. Kind of that's or to avoid being
Right. Right.
yeah. And my mom and other people, they're like, "Oh, you're living the life." My friends, they're like, "You're living the life. You do what you love to do. You work in the music business, in the film business." But for me, I'm still like looking for, no, that's just my day job. Like my storytelling has not really developed quite to where I want it to be. And yes, I love being around music, and I learn so much. And I love being around movies. I love movies. So, how did I get to the
Right.
movies? Ultimately, I got to the movies when the band kind of tanked and fell apart, Mankind Liberation Front, like we had, like it
Okay.
was it was a wild ride. It was really great, and it taught me a lot again, and big record labels, and lots of new, influences in my life, and it was a crazy time in my life too.
Right.
And when it all kind of fell apart, amongst other things in my life too, it was like just a lot of people warned me that said, don't go to LA. If you go to LA, that'll be bad, like LA corrupts people, and it sure
Yeah.
did, it sure did, and at the same time, it was a
It
valuable
does.
process. It was a valuable process, and I mean, I love LA. LA is great, and which is why I'm still here. But when the band really
Right.
fell
You and
apart,
me
I
both.
went. Yep. Yep. Where are you from?
I was originally from New York, and now I live
Okay.
up just north of
Okay.
you in
Yep. Yep.
in the Ventura area. But I
Yeah, right.
understand
New
one of
York.
your first gigs was working with Mel Gibson on Passion of the Christ, and then Apocalypto, which led to an
Yeah.
Academy Award nomination. What was your involvement with those movies?
Well, when that music fell, I was working on the sound team as a sound designer and sound editor. And when my music fell apart, I went
Okay.
back to some of my old Berkeley connections who were in the movie business now. And one of my friends, Matt Temple, he said too, he was like, "Hey man, I don't want to even help you out. you're gonna hate it. Once you're in the post-production business, you're not gonna have no more time for your art, for your music. It's not you. It's not you. I don't wanna pull
Right.
you in. He warned me, but he gave me an opportunity to help out. I learned just the very basic skills I mean, I already knew the basic skills, but I hadn't really applied them in a professional environment with like real real projects. And for I don't know, half a
Right.
year or so, I did some B horror movies, and I got to work a little bit on the animated show King of the Hills, and doing Foley, footsteps, and all kinds of stuff. And very quickly, some of the
Yeah,
people
that's
I was
fun.
working with, they're pulled in the Passion of the Christ gig, because it was a very infamous kind of project, and a lot of people were kind of afraid of it. And the way that Mel Gibson was running the whole thing was very underground, independent. So it somehow happened that kind of like an up and
Right.
coming crew of people landed the job for doing that movie. And yeah, so I was relatively inexperienced in that area, really. I mean, I hadn't done that much. I mean, again, as an artist and as an engineer and as a producer and all that, I mean, it's not rocket science. I mean, to me, it seems that stuff comes kind of easy. Like, I mean, I'm not to diss
Right.
anybody's craftsmanship who's like a full long-term, lifelong sound designer, movie audio post person. Like, it takes a lot of love and dedication, and
Right.
people get so into it. And me, again, I'm
Oh
kind of
yeah.
like grazing the surface, but I mean, I go very deep emotionally and from a storytelling point of view, and especially that movie, The Passion of the Christ. I mean, it was a profound spiritual opportunity and process for me. I mean, my blood and sweat and tears went into there literally in some ways, and it was a profound process, and what a great blessing to work on that. Like, I mean, I'm very proud of it, and very hard. We were joking about Mel Gibson's movies that they were all torture movies. We were like, oh man, he comes with another torture movie. Like starting with Braveheart,
Uh-huh.
when I mean, he just, like, and Apocalypto was the same. I mean, they're all the same. All these movies, they're the same action
Right.
chase movies with lots of torture. Very very brutal, and I
Right.
really shy away from violent graphic movie content. I don't like it. I think that I'm against it. I would speak out against it. In Mel Gibson's case, I
Right.
love it. Like, it's great. He really knows what he's doing. He really tells a story, and in order to go that deep, you need to show these things, and you just need to see the torture. Whether it's Jesus Christ or the indigenous hunter gatherer in Apocalypto or Braveheart. Like, it's very powerful
Right.
storytelling. Yeah. And yeah, in Apocalypto, it was extremely
Absolutely.
exciting. I was the guy who did all the I did all the atmospheres, all the jungles. And I mean, the whole movie is in the jungle. And it's like, how do you keep that interest? I mean, it was very, very challenging, to keep it interesting, but it's because it's always the same. I
Right.
mean, but it's not the same, because if you're running and if you have cuts in chase scenes from from one person to the next, and I mean, it's pretty elaborate, and we had a big arsenal of sound recordings that we got from a nature biology dude who was down in Central America, who had all these phenomenal recordings that we bought of him. And I
Oh
mean, I had
nice.
access to really great original jungle recordings from that actual area that there was original proprietary. And yeah, very very exciting, interesting process. And also, the way that is in what I really loved about being in the post production business and sound design and all that is that, I mean, it is very very high end, high quality. It is such a greased machine, to make a movie, and to be a little cog in that
Right.
machine. It can be very rewarding. I'm a control freak. I love to be in charge and do
Okay.
everything my way and do everything and see the big picture. In the case of, if there's a good captain, like in the case of Mel Gibson, I love being that cog that just makes the jungle sound good, and spend months,
Right.
like
Exactly.
months to make 90 minutes of jungle sound good, like, you can do it in 3 days if you
Right.
have to, on a little indie movie, but that's not how it went then, like we
Sure.
really, I mean, there's the level of detail, like it's very fulfilling as an artist, But again, like
I love it.
I didn't go too deep. I still do that stuff today as a day job, and nevertheless
Right.
never really made a full career out of it because I'm too much of an artist, like I'm not enough of just a sound guy who can just be like, oh, let's, I'll do everything to make your movie sound good. If it's not the movie that I like, it's hard for me to put my heart. I mean, I'm a little too. It's hard,
Well, isn't that true with anything, though? Isn't that really true with anything? Because if you don't put your heart into it, then it's just going to be like average, right?
Yes,
As an
yes,
artist, I know that if
yeah.
I put my heart into it, and I have the bands that I produce or whatever, if their heart's in it, it's going to be way way better than if they're not, right? And that leads me to my next question, is one of the most curious, which is, can you please explain the differences between your roles as a re-recording mixer and a sound editor and a sound effects editor and all those different roles? Because my audience probably doesn't know what they are.
Okay. Well, the re-recording mixer is the one that mixes the film at the very end. He'll take all the everything that's been supplied, the original recordings from set with all the added music, the added sound effects, the replaced dialogue, everything that got created in post-production, which today is pretty vast, like it wasn't always like that, but today
Right.
what you hear in a movie is, a lot of it is recreated, like barely any of the footsteps or movements or anything, is actually like, from set, it's all redone,
Right.
And so, and then you
Dialogue
got
too, right?
the dialogue, a lot of it is replaced too for quality reasons, performance reasons, or, technical difficulties sometimes. Um,
Right.
so yeah, there's a lot going on in post-production. And yeah, and then you got the
Okay.
sound editor team is the ones that, it splits up into different categories again, like the real true sound designers are the ones who create the real abstract things that are almost musical, that that are, the drones and the very subjective kind of ideas, whereas you'll also have their straight up hard effects
Right.
like, gunshots and doors and, oh, here's a dog that barks, okay, you got to put, that's,
Sure.
I mean, it's not, it's, you put the bark that looks like
Got to
the
find a good dog
sounds like
bark.
the, yeah, exactly. If it's that kind of dog,
Right.
you put that kind,
Yeah.
But then there's, there's a lot of creative decisions, obviously, that can come too, that is where it gets more into the fun, artistic stuff, which, I love doing that. I just got to do that on a show, Reacher. There's a new show on Amazon coming out. They redid that whole Reacher franchise that they used to do
Oh yeah.
with Tom Cruise. Never seen the Tom Cruise ones, but the new show is really cool. I really enjoyed working on it, and I got to do mostly the sound design parts of it, which were a little bit more the creative elements, and I had a lot of fun doing that, and I love the show, so it was fun to do it. But that being said, too, I do want to interject that I do find that I have the ability to have fun and put my heart into things, even if it's like a big piece of crap, like like once I get into the creative flow and once
Oh
I'm just
sure.
like resigned to being like, hey, this is what I'm doing right now. Let's make this sound good. I will have a lot of fun to make it as good as possible. It's just to do that long term. That's where I find it,
Absolutely.
it's hard to make a career out of it. It's hard to make a career out of it.
I
That's,
agree. I agree.
yeah, you know. Yeah, so that's the sound. That's been
And
the
well,
sound world.
I like it, and thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
And like, I'm going to switch it up a little bit. And you're well versed in many artistic endeavors. For example, your
Yes.
photography is very well
Yeah.
thought of, and some of it's been
Yeah.
displayed along Basquiat and Picasso. And that
Yeah.
must be a really great accomplishment and a validation of your talents.
It is, and it looks great on paper, and I'm really excited about the accolades, and to like say, being part of the nominated team for Apocalypto, and Basquiat, and having my art next to him, and things like that. It's great, it's great. Sometimes the cynical artist is like, yeah,
Sure.
but how do I capitalize on that, and who's paying the bills and all that, and again, going back to
Sure.
Socrates and all of these guys, living in a barrel in somewhere, and like the anti-hero of that artist who is really authentic, being really authentic with the storytelling, with the art, kind of requires being without compromise, and I mean, I do take pride to have these accomplishments, and I'm honored by it. And I'm also recognizing that really artistically and creatively, it's of very little value. Like the real value only really comes in the moment of the creative process, and it's really detached from an
Right.
audience or a critic or my parents patting me on the head in my mind still as an adult person, and all that stuff that we
Sure.
have, as creatures of society, so and I've
Agreed.
also
Agreed.
I've come across great heroes. One of the great things about living in LA is that like many of my childhood heroes are teenage, people that I was really admiring as a teenager. I know them today. I know some of them, and I have friendships with people where I could never
Right.
have imagined as a kid. Where I'm like, wow, this guy thinks highly of me, and we have a mutual respect level. Like, and I realize in those situations too
Uh
that
huh.
these people that they also look so great on paper, or they are my heroes or whatever, and they're still the real life challenges and life process. It's still about
That's right.
being right in the moment, being in that creative process, and feeling good about yourself and about what you do, and daily getting up again, and hitting the whatever your craft is, your art is, and putting yourself there, and making yourself a channel of whatever needs to come through, so you fulfill your purpose. And so yeah, that's
Exactly.
some thoughts.
So, can you tell me about the game Rocketbirds and what your involvement with that was?
Yeah, that's I so I had this band. I still do. It's kind of hibernating a little bit, but I have plans to resurrect it, called New World Revolution, which
Okay.
is it's like a spacey rock, electro rock band that
Okay.
somebody that I just kind of met. Actually, that goes back to my Austrian roots. Like a bunch of my friends in Austria, we would get together. Still do to this day, really, in the summers. A friend of our one of the ringleaders. He has a house on the lake, and we'd all go there for 2 weeks, and we'd make art. We'd make art, and we'd have some
Great.
kind of art show at the end of it. And there was always a little bit of goals to kind of turn it into something more public or big, but it was mostly just a way to all get us together. And there was a good collection of some very accomplished people in their own different crafts, and we'd
Right.
we'd do installations in the
Sure.
any case. One of these guys, one year there was a person there, Sean Yu, who good friend at this point, but somebody brought him along. He was originally from Indonesia. I don't know how he ended up in Austria. I mean, I think he went to school with somebody, and they brought him along to that art show. And he started doing a little cartoon about these birds with one of my other friends there.
Okay.
So that was the birth of Rocketbirds video game, really. Years later,
Ah.
Sean Yu hit me up and was like, "Hey, man, send me some of your recent music. I have this video game that I'm doing, and I think those songs, some of those things that I heard of yours, that would really fit, and this game had this kind of storyline about this anti-hero, and it was very funny, politically incorrect, like these crazy birds, kind of like in a sort of fascist setting, and the crazy, I mean, very, very crazy and raunchy, and kind of I mean, I loved it. It was great. It's great, and it really fit some of those
Yeah, it
lyrics that I
sounds like a
already
fun
had.
project.
Yeah, and what ended up happening is,
Right.
you know, they ended up using a bunch of my pre-existing songs because they just fit so well, and like, you know, cut scenes in the game. They'd actually just like kind of make music videos out of my songs and cut the storyline of that protagonist to the lyrics that already like worked as it was. I mean, it was pretty interesting. And then
Right.
I also ended up writing extra tracks, and then later on for the second part of the game, I wrote like a new theme song, and you know, and then you know, I ended up helping with other aspects of the game too, and you know, they even made me a playable character in one of the versions where it could be my producer alias Agent H. You know, you could select to be Agent H, and I used to
Right.
have all these promo shoots with wearing an astronaut suit that was kind of like the theme for the New World Revolution. I'd be wearing an astronaut suit and be like a spaceman, and so yeah, you could
That's
be
fabulous.
the you could be the that bird in the game that wore the spacesuit and had like a special weapon that only the Agent H chicken had, you know. So yeah,
Right, right. That's pretty
hmm
cool.
yeah. No, that's again one of those
So yeah,
accolades.
let's switch it up a
Yeah,
little bit again.
okay. Yeah.
Let's switch it up a little bit again. And like you've been labeled a shaman, and what can you tell us about that? Because I'm very interested about this, and what inspired you to go down this path?
Um, Well, like I said, it was always kind of there in some way that like that first album that I mentioned, The God's Call, you know, I mean, where did that come from? I mean, shortly after that album, God's Call, I kind of started a new little side band called Cosmo God. We called it Cosmo God. And I mean, you know, I didn't know about the Grateful Dead too much or about Ken Casey and all of these guys and the electric Kool-Aid acid test. But that's essentially what I was really interested in. That's what I was doing. You know, we would, you know, really give acid to everybody and put on these crazy performances, and everything was day glow, and we'd put Jesus Christ statues
Right,
there in day glow, and we'd have religious symbolism and weird 8 millimeter footage projections and a big old steel robot that one of my friends made, and it was like, you know, some sort of attempt
okay,
to create ceremony, you know. And I mean, it was, you know, arguably irresponsible and dangerous with all the drugs and the possible bad role modeling, but you know, the intention back then was
right,
already,
right,
you know, some kind of higher connection with something, you know, that I saw myself in. And I remember going back even further. I remember as a little kid on vacation in Italy, building little telephones to talk to the aliens in the sand and teaching like other kids. I remember very vividly like teaching other kids how to build these telephones that we could talk to entities and creator and these things, you know, and you know, and I
sweet,
was so that interest was always there, you know, that for something supernatural and connect with that and some kind of ability there, and you know,
right,
um,
okay,
other big steps that made that more concrete in my life was, you know, I got to be very involved in these mystery schools, you know, Golden Dawn type orders, you know, and I was initiated into all kinds of things, and you know, took it very seriously, and you know, a big part of my life spent in, you know,
sure,
ceremonial, learning about ceremony and Kabbalistic things and tarot and astrology and, you know, all kinds of, and, you know, kind of coming from a Roman Catholic, straight up, very normal kind of background that imprinted me very, very
right,
greatly too. You know, a lot of people I know, they're very scared, you know, they're very anti church and all that. I never had that. For me, it was like, you know, when
sure,
I got introduced as a little kid to like the church, and, you know, I mean, I was an altar boy too and all of that, you know, like, you know, I was a punk rocker and an altar boy at the same
okay,
time, you know, like to me, it just made perfect sense. Of course, you worship, of course, you find a connection to God, and just because some people use God to justify all kinds of wars or all kinds of bigotry or sexism or whatever, it doesn't make God any worse, you
right,
know. I mean, that's how I always saw it. And then, but you know, the word shaman and all that, I mean, it seemed kind of interesting and exciting in my early 20s even to identify with that concept more, you know, like today you know,
sure,
that term is used a little loosely in many ways, and but
it is,
you know, It is, and and I have to, especially the spiritual salad bar that Los Angeles has to offer in Southern California. I mean, there's just so much going on that's like, new age, and it's hard not to be judgmental and have opinions about any of that. But myself, I mean,
Right, right,
I did spend a lot of time, learning about how to relate to spirit and to God in different ways. And I went, I mean, it was probably at least a solid decade of very deep immersion in the Western mystery traditions and the Kabbalah and the Golden Dawn, and really, I mean, I went far with as a meaning as a big process of my daily life, and learning about these
right.
schools and traditions existing that really go back thousands of years without requiring any financial participation when you're part of those things, and and very, very awesome stuff. And I mean, eventually it led me to go into more native, indigenous things. I ended up getting very close with Lakota tradition, Native American, the so-called Sioux.
Nice.
Um,
Okay.
and that kind of grew out of my mystery school commitments that I really made, but it just kind of
Right.
also, you know, going digging back into my childhood, I realized I come from two different, very distinct backgrounds. One is my father's family, very intellectual. I learned Latin and Greek in school, and like, I mean, I was always a very intellectual, brainiac type. I have a sharp, keen mind.
That's fabulous.
Which has been good, and also has
Sure.
been my demise. Like, it's a dangerous thing, such a sharp mind. But the other side,
Absolutely. I know the feeling.
yep, my mother's side of the family is more, mountain farmers, hunters, nature, that kind of vibe, and which is also very, and that kind of found expression later in my life, possibly when I really started associating with the Lakota people that much. And it's been a real privilege and blessing that I found some great teachers there, and I was, officially adopted and made very strong relations. And this is my real true family, the way that we relate and the way we spend time and what we do. And I spend a lot of time traveling and being all over the place, and and I
Right.
learned a lot there in the regards of taking care. I mean, the way that the native, they really don't like the word shaman and shamanism, but the way that the medicine works
Right.
in that context, the way that I understand it today, and the way that I've been taught is, you kind of take care of your own and of your family, and it's all very family oriented. And and I learned the value of
Right.
of being there for yourself and for your tribe, and being self-sufficient. And then some people, they go take it a step further, and they really become healers and medicine people for the larger community. And I mean, for myself, it kind of became an arc where I realized at one point, hey, I'm never gonna be a real Lakota traveling priest. Like, even though I kind of
Right.
really put myself in that trajectory, and it's in some way a bit of an identity crisis as a white person and all of that. And and
Sure.
but now today, I'm starting to integrate it in a way, and starting to realize more and more that I am, my art and my expression, which I always knew, like my storytelling and my art, this is led by the desire to help out, to provide something useful to the people,
Right.
and
Exactly.
so that being said, I do dedicate a lot of my personal time, one of my daily time, to really being in what you would say, that shaman medicine person way of life, and sweat lodges and sun and ceremonies, and a lot of ceremonial things and prayers, and helping the community, and work, all that kind of stuff. It's a big part of my life, and it's beginning to really manifest in my art more. I shied away from that. Like, I didn't want to. I always thought it has to be separate. I always thought that, this is the
Right.
religion and this
Exactly.
is the job, and there's been a lot of
Right.
attempts that I would criticize or judge that I see other people trying to capitalize on, like, spiritual teachings in media, which at this point I realize, hey, if anybody's going to do it, I got to do it. That's what I got to do. I've been in the media
That's
world
right.
all my life, and I actually have a somewhat grounded footing in some of these spiritual realms. And I have had the opportunity to work on some of these projects, like the Passion of the Christ. I mean, that was, it was really profound spiritual thing for a lot of people worldwide, and that's why I was the
Absolutely.
guy who got to help with doing sound effects there, like, I believe, like, and there was other many much more qualified people, and but I fit the role because of my spiritual background, I believe. And there's been this other movie called The Shift of the Ages that that
Okay.
had a lot to do with me getting connected with an indigenous life, and opened a lot. It was about a Maya and shaman in Guatemala, and we traveled down there and did ceremonies with the guy and followed him and documented him and did all kinds of stuff, and it was like, how did I end up there? How did So, things like that kind of like keep happening where and it's probably going to I'm being more consciously open to that right now, where I'm really attempting to
Sure.
utilize that medicine, or as and step into my role as a artist, medicine person, like, I mean, I don't have to
Right.
start no
You and me
cult,
both.
I don't, yeah, it'll be both. And I mean, it always is. I mean, big heroes like, look at Jim Morrison and those kind of people, like, they're arguably priests,
Right.
and they are,
Oh,
and
for
that
sure.
is, and that is kind of my connection to art. I mean, I've kept it, tried to neatly keep it separate, but it's futile. It's all coming together right now, and I am finally getting over the hump of also, have a kind of like a clothing line and record label brewing, where we're trying to do ceremonial things, we're like, we're trying to do ceremonial
Okay.
things without trespassing onto holy grounds, and without trivializing any of those things, and kind of making it too homogenized for television or whatever, but still kind of sharing it with the world in a way that can
Right.
be reciprocal, so that people in need can receive help, and people in need who need that information, who need that medicine, can receive help that way, and have the people where these traditions come from also benefit and make it, but it's very it's kind of sketchy to move in those areas, it is hard, the old separation
Right. I
of
know.
religion and state, there's a reason why they had that idea, like, it's kind of good to keep these things separate. And
Absolutely.
at the same time, you cannot, like, at least not somebody like me, because everything is religious and spiritual, like, everything that I do
Sure.
has is approached through that filter, yeah.
Right, right. Well, the universe has a really interesting way of showing us a path, right? So, with the healing thing, I love that you're involved in all that, because it's very parallel to my life as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you're
Mm-hmm.
into some sound healing,
Mm-hmm.
and that seems to be a thread that's been woven through your shamanism, and because you seem to be very in tune. No pun intended, with the sound in general. So, what can you
Yeah.
tell me about your sound healing and stuff?
Um, I wouldn't say that I'm like an expert on the specific sound healing. I know other people like yourself have
Okay,
gone much further with the actual frequencies and things like that. For me, it's more like
right.
um, let's say. I mean, I did all the research, and I did all the, I went through all the binaural beat phases, and to the, put,
Sure.
back as a teenager with that band Cosmo God, we'd put, like, alpha waves and delta waves and stuff on, when we're on stage. I mean, in order to create, openness in the audience to have openness to divine contact, we'd put those sound waves there, and I did all that research about what existed,
Right.
and we'd do a lot of like low frequency stuff, and put it in some of the recordings and stuff. So I have some experience with it. I didn't
Right.
I didn't take it too deep or too far, you know. Um, it's more like the
Right. I
story.
gotcha.
The
Well,
it's more like the content that I've found myself being tickled by, and I think that's what more of an expert. The actual, like, I know that. No, I'll leave it right
I
there.
gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's
yeah.
something that I've, obviously delved very, very deeply
Hmm.
into. I have a company called Tomes that's,
Hmm.
very much into the sound healing. It's an online
Hmm.
service, and it helps people sleep. And, then there's a bunch of sound healing tonalities that people can get into. And, like you, just checking out all the alpha and delta waves and things like that to open, a person's mind and their experience with, the arts is something that I'm very interested in as well, and I think it's very, very intriguing to me, and it works. Like, I've never seen
Yeah.
it work before. I mean, it's really cool.
No, it is
So
really cool.
I want to
As you mentioned that
go
too, I
ahead. I'm
do want to
sorry.
add real quick. I did actually. I mean, I'm downplaying my involvement in all that. I realize right now. Like there's this other project called the Deprogramming Division that I used to do a lot of cool stuff with, where we would create tons of these ambient meditation soundscapes, and we do live performances where, the science, we didn't focus on the science of, okay, what kind of frequencies are we using that much anymore, like, but we did
Right.
create these healing spaces with the music, and some of it was very Kabbalistically informed, and, like what I know through like the tarot and the tree of life and all of that stuff, there is correlations with
Mhm.
frequency of certain mind states, similar to what I was talking about with the alpha waves and the delta waves. But so we would create like a water soundscape, that was in the exact tonality that would relate kabbalistically with making you open to that idea of the letter Mayim and water and the tarot card of the Hanged Man and all the other concepts, what it all means, and so we do a bunch of stuff like that, and
Sure. Sure.
and some of that I still intend, again, like I have so many things that were kind of not quite finished or not quite released. All those soundscapes, one of these
Oh
days
yeah, I
I'll
know the
I'll
feeling.
I'll pull them all together and make them all available in one big chunk, or so yeah,
Well,
I'll
we can
leave it
talk
like
about
right
that a
there.
little later because I might have
Okay.
something that
Okay.
we can do together with that.
Mm-hmm.
But
That'd be great.
I wanted to really get into galactic history. So
Yes.
you're involved
Yes.
with this project. What is it, and how did it come about?
The galactic history of our universe. It is I should have practiced, prepared a good elevator pitch, how to say it in a couple of sentences. No, it's it is a breaching experiment. That's kind of like one of the terms that I like to use. I'll explain what that is in a bit. It is,
Okay.
for practical purposes, it's a graphic illustration of an account of how mankind and our species was created and has developed on this planet, and where we all come from in the context of alien races and other star systems. That's what it is, and
Okay.
it is based on Stuart Swerdlove's book and lecture that I got to be part of
Okay.
some time ago. Some time ago, must have been at least 15 years ago, and I found it was very cool and interesting, and I felt the need to kind of take it and turn it into something that's palatable for larger masses. Like I feel like one of my talents is to edit and morph and change things, or cherry pick elements out of something so that it kind of becomes accessible to teenagers and to like a lot of people, and to, I don't want to say simpler minds, but maybe to people who don't have the time or the desire to spend all that time researching and being in all these like intellectual or spiritual realms, like I love to condense it and things into.
Right.
So that's what that is, it's like a much larger concept and lecture and all that condensed down to 45 minutes of fun and entertainment too. Like I love, like I love art
Sweet.
movies, and I love, off the beaten path music. But I think what I actually love the most is like really um, commercial commercially viable and accessible material. Like if that's done, if actually like
Right.
great content is done in a way that speaks to everyone, I just think that's the most beautiful and fascinating thing. Like that's what I strive for myself, and that's what I get
Oh
into.
yeah.
Like my most favorite movies and artists are all things that are actually widely successful too. I mean, maybe I'll take that
Right. Of
back. A lot of
course.
my favorite artists, no, you never have heard of them, or maybe you will, but a lot of people won't. But yeah,
Sure.
man,
Sure.
that but yeah, it's a little contradictory there. But so yeah, the Galactic History, it also goes back to my good friend James Mathers, great artist, great LA-based artist
Okay.
who I met back in the days when I had this loft in Venice where we had all these salons and things and stuff that we were doing there that, somebody introduced us back then. And one of the early projects that we did was he would illustrate a comic that we made out of one of the New World Revolution EPs, where we took every song and took all
Okay.
the lyrics and turned them into like tarot cards and special metaphysical teachings about the world. And, and he would, we'd sit in the loft for weeks and he'd bang out these drawings and I'd kind of letter them and I'd be like, no, more like this and more like that. And it was a great creative process. And, we just found that we are both mad scientists and mad professors, and we just love, we just really got along really, really great. And when I was doing those early first I basically recorded Stuart's workshop of the Galactic History, and then I kind of like
Right.
rewrote it, and I was like, how can we kind of like turn this into like a thing that works in 45 minutes and that is digestible and that is understandable, not just to the far out alien enthusiasts and to the spiritual enthusiasts, but to, like a everyday
Right.
audience. So after I actually had that recording, I kind of like re-edited the whole thing, rewrote it somewhat, and then had him come back in the studio, and then I recorded the VO,
Okay.
recorded Stuart doing the whole VO, and then the Mantic programming division that I mentioned, where we were doing a lot of these like experimental jams and meditational pieces, that just lent itself to start doing the uh, early recordings for that. And we had some kind of jam sessions that were in the inspiration of the context. And even back then when James heard about it, he was like, oh, this is great, this is the best stuff ever. He loved that project. So he just started
That's
making these
great.
crayon drawings, like he made crayon drawings about it that he dropped off. He's like, hey, check out what I did, kind of like these really colorful crayon drawings on black paper. And I'd never seen anything like it. And I would take these drawings, I'd scan them and, play with the contrast and get a little bit into post-production on the computer with those drawings. And they just popped so well. And it was a very unique style that seemed really new and exciting. And, as it
Right.
is, things, some time passed, and recently Shannon, who you had on the show, Shannon O'Shea, who you recently had on the show too,
Yes.
she called me up and she's like, hey, the Galactic History Project, we gotta dig that out, we gotta finish that, how about it? And
Absolutely.
I was excited to have something to do, as always. I mean, I never get bored. I always got my fingers in millions of things, but it was, it seemed the right time to really
Right.
put to create something of substance, and I guess the reason why we never finished is because it was a project of substance that um just took a lot of took resources that I thought I didn't have, and I mean we spent the better part of a year, James and I,
Right.
now to really make a lot of drawings and really rework the whole thing and get the music really dialed in and get the thing just really dialed in, and it was really like, and for the first time for me, an opportunity to finally do something that I've always wanted to do too, which is to really direct and produce visual media. I mean, I always thought, I'm gonna be a
Right.
movie director or producer. And I learned so many aspects of that business, but I've never sat in those chairs. And and this is a pretty relatively simple process compared to like a Hollywood movie, of course. Nevertheless, I found it really
Sure.
creatively exciting and rewarding for me to get to draw that bigger picture and to direct the process. And I'm very proud of how it came out. And in some ways, it seems like it's kind of a draft for something bigger that we want to do. In other ways, it's a real
Right.
standalone finished product. Like first we were like, is this like the storyboards for the real movie we're gonna make out of these? And then we realized, no,
Right.
this is the movie. Like it is a real, it became a
This is it.
real,
Right.
this is it. It's a real unique piece of art, and yes, there is um there's some real compromises and some real what to us as artists seems like, we couldn't do we don't have the time and the resources to do exactly what we wanted to do. Nevertheless, it's a beautiful art piece and story that that really tells that story. I've seen now with some of the responses that we're getting that it's maybe not as commercially accessible as I thought it as I intended it to be originally. I mean, it's still kind of for a bit of a fringe
Right.
audience. Like I had some people who said, "Oh, this is really scary," like, which at first I was like, "What do you mean? This is beautiful. This is like beautiful psychedelic storytelling." But to some people, it's real scary, and I understood that. I had one guy comment on YouTube saying something like, this is satanic and without any God, like there is no God in this story and it's ungodly. And again, you hear me talking about God the whole show. And I mean, I could, I got the Old Testament sitting right next to my bed and I'm studying it every night and I'm reading the Bible with my son and I'm into all kinds of other spirituality, but, but I consider myself a man of God. So it was kind of interesting too to
Right.
see, hey, there's people that think that's satanic, and hey, it's not the first or the last time somebody's gonna try to peg me that way, but yeah.
Oh, of course. People have the weirdest, they come away with some of the weirdest impressions sometimes of, our good work and what we try to
Uh-huh.
put into it.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And
I love
that's all
that.
right.
I think Galactic History is really cool.
Thank you.
In this physical universe, there are an estimated 10 billion galaxies. The galaxy we live in, the Milky Way, is estimated to have 100 billion stars. If less than 1/10 of 1% of all of those stars have any type of intelligent life, that's still millions of civilizations.
Yeah.
So, in closing, I was wondering if you had a bucket list of artists or multimedia persons that you'd like to work with.
A bucket list of multimedia artists that I like to work with. Wow. Wow, I mean, there's a lot of them that I'd like to work with. I mean, I know in my bio recently, we put it for the Galactic History
Right.
website. We said, hey, I have this goal of working with Peter Jackson speaking of the Old Testament, I'd love to make a movie of the Old Testament, a really long, multi-feature, epic, huge. Yeah, that's something I'd really
Sure.
love to do. I mean, it's a crazy undertaking. Maybe I'll do it with somebody else if it takes too
Well, you never
long,
know,
or
right?
you never know. No, but that would be really great. I mean, other artists that I would love to work with. I mean, David Bowie comes to mind. I mean, I don't know,
You're,
use him as an actor in
you're a little
something.
late with
I
that one.
mean, yeah, I know. I mean, a lot
Uh-huh.
of those. Like Jim Morrison. It's a big. Like a lot of them are gone.
Right,
But
right.
who? Hodorowski. He's somebody who seems
Okay.
really interesting. I mean, there's yeah, yeah, Hodorowski. I mean, that'd be a real honor. That'd be really something.
I got you. Okay. Well, we'll put it out to the universe, and you never know what's going
Yeah,
to come back.
yeah, yeah. David Lynch. David Lynch. A lot of these are
There you
movie
go.
people. You can tell. Yeah,
Yep.
David Lynch. I mean,
One
I
of my
know he's not
heroes.
really. Yeah, right on, right on. Yeah.
So, lastly, do you have any superpowers or hidden talents?
Superpowers are hidden talents. Yeah, I can foresee the future. Unfortunately, not in any context and exactly how I want to, but in many situations, and that I think makes me a good producer and a good yeah, big picture kind of thinker and potentially a good director really is because I
Right.
kind of see how things, how they say that the the when you see that finished art piece in the big rock, and you before you chisel it away, you don't really create, you just remove what's in the way of what's already there, kind of thing, like that.
Correct.
I think that's and that taking that even further into like social situations and spiritual situations and just everyday life situations. I mean, I can see where that's gonna go often, like, and it's a connection of it's a combination of intuition and educated guessing and complex
Right.
computations in my mind that are just based on having studied a lot of things, but compare that with intuition, like I'd venture as far as saying
Right. Exactly.
I can tell you what's going to happen very often. So that's sort of my superpowers.
That's great. Well, I'm going to hang out
Yeah,
with you more often so I know what's going to
yeah,
go on.
yeah.
Well, here we could go on and on and on, and this has been really fun and really adventurous. I really
Awesome.
love the stories and the anecdotes, and thank you, Herwig, for taking the time to be part of this episode of My Right Stuff. I really
My
appreciate it.
pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And so, lastly, lastly, where can our audience find you?
Right now, probably the best starting point is galactichistory.net. That
Okay,
is, the
great.
home of the galactic history. There is all kinds of links to other things. Some of the other stuff that's out there probably is I don't even know the link for it. I'm just beginning to create a compilation of old music that's all gonna be available on SoundCloud, and you know what? Let me give you that link for that too. Okay. It is soundcloud.com/agent_H. So yeah.
Sounds easy enough. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and that'll, it's a beginning archive of a lot of things. Hmm. Great.
Great. I can't wait to dig into that. That's going to be fun. Well, I'm your host, Lord Toby Reed, right? And this has been another informative and educational episode of My Right Stuff. Please remember to listen loud, play hard, and keep reaching for your dreams. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Do you suffer from insomnia, depression, or anxiety? Well, our sponsor, TAUMMHOMS, may be able to help you in these areas. TAUMMHOMS, a natural sleep and sound healing portal, helping people globally get to sleep faster and stay asleep for longer, and you can find this piece of gold at www.taummhoms.com. That's www.taummhoms.com. Most of all, I'd like to thank all of you beautiful people who stream, download, watch, and support My Wright Stuff. And please keep spreading the word, because we really, really appreciate it. Also, we now have a My Wright Stuff store where you can pick up some lovely snazzy merch for those beautiful bodies. Just go to mywrightstuff.com and click on the store tab. And don't forget to tag us in any photos of the merch so we can include you in a future episode. Please also be sure to subscribe to the podcast channel of your choice, as well as our YouTube channel. Toby says it'll give you 10 years good luck. I'm not so sure. I think it's maybe more. This has been another amazing episode of My Wright Stuff, and please be sure to tune in this week, next week, and every week for yet another adventurous and informative show. I'm your co-host, Sir Gareth Dighton, and thank you, my lovelies, for tuning in. No star, you beautiful people, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you for watching My Wright Stuff. This episode was brought to you by TAUMMHOMS, a natural sleep and sound healing portal available globally at www.taummhoms.com. That's www.taummhoms.com.